Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SB Reacts where today we have ourselves a 9-track album from an act named Doc Jazz titled Unknown Destination, and if we switch over to here we have ourselves the pre-listen on Byter.com. All 9 tracks here for us to peruse. I should note that this album will be coming out on the 27th of March as I understand it on, I suppose, major digital streaming platforms. This is going out on the 24th, so if you're watching this before it goes out, feel free to go check out the pre-save. Links in the description, as well as the vinyl, because they're releasing vinyl for this. We're going to listen through this album from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Take My Word for It. Let's go, let's do it. Nice and smooth.
Wonder what it's like to be trapped inside your head, making a mess of things, try to fix something instead.
Solid production on the vocals.
Put your foot down ain't the way, doesn't get you anywhere. Are you seeing things your way? Make it up out of thin air. I don't know who you're listening to, why you think you're never wrong. I'm not aware of what you do, and I don't know why you think I'm to blame. There's nothing further from the truth. Take my word for it. Take my word for it. Take my word for it.
Great call response with the
I am
guitars.
just being rational, but you're thinking it's not true. Now you take it personal while this mess is on you. And I know you're very sure it's my fault that you were hurt, but you're really insecure. All this digging in the dirt. I don't know who you're listening to,
Oh, brass.
why you think you're never wrong, and not aware of what you do. And I don't know why you think
Great
I'm to
development with the
blame.
claps.
There's nothing further from the truth. Take my word for it. Take my word for it. It really ain't so hard to see, but you gotta face reality. 'Cause this wasn't meant to be. Just chill out and talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Very well.
I don't know who you're listening to, why you think you never want it, not aware of what you do. And I don't know why you think I'm to blame. There's nothing further from the truth. Take my word for it.
Oh, additional vocalists. Nice. I like that little sub drop at the end with how the talk to me part resonates around the stereo fill with those delays, going backwards and forwards. Nice use of automation there. Just letting you know as well, I've got the lyrics on their website. I'll put the link in the description for that as well, but if you're kind of trying to figure out what the song is about, it's there for you as well. I can hear the words clearly through the songs enough to not really feel the need to focus too much on this additional sort of prompt, but like still, it's good to double check some things. But yeah, that was Take My Word for It, track number 1 off of the Unknown Destination album. In each of these sort of post-track sections, I'm going to be providing a sort of mini analysis per tune. from like lyrics and vocals all the way through to production. And then at the end of each of these 9 tracks, we're going to give an overall conclusion on the album where we discuss these things, plus including any applicable constructive critique, and then my final sort of general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think this track is about Doc Jazz saying to someone, hey, I know that someone's told you all these things about me and about things in general, but we don't necessarily need to get as wound up about these things as you are right now. We can maybe approach them from a different perspective. And I just think that's, considering the album is titled Unknown Destination, makes a lot of sense. Maybe they think they're headed somewhere and they're going somewhere completely different. It's just kind of like Doc Jazz is trying to warn them. I think that's a kind of a really gentle, interesting start to an album. It makes me wonder whether the rest of this record is going to be sort of more about interpersonal situations, but either way, it's totally fine. I think the vocal performances through this from Doc Jazz themselves on the main lead, as well as I think there was some female vocals doing so, or some like falsettos maybe from Doc Jazz. Like there were different vocal takes, and I like the different vocal textures and timbres in there. We picked really effective main sort of core melodies for the different verse and chorus sections. We also had nice tails and moments of legato and vibrato and some cascading sort of like harmonies working with each other, as well as some call and responses, which were really nice to listen through. Ultimately, it was quite a suave, smooth performance that I think expression-wise captured the essence of what the music was trying to communicate. So I think the vocals were well handled. They were nice and clear and easy to understand and get along with there. And I think it was nice sort of palatable conversational tone to it, with a bit of sort of articulation and sass to it when required as we went through the piece. Instrumentally, there was a lot to appreciate within the 3 minutes 47 of this first track. You know, when it's 2 to 4 minutes, it's in that sweet spot where if it's shorter than 2 minutes, sometimes you can be occasionally missing context or added nuance that would come from just a bit extra. Whereas if it goes for longer than 4 minutes, a track can sometimes overplay its core components and become less interesting, or sort of lose listener attention through that. I think there are enough instrumental breaks and points of like the little sort of organ solo with the various filtering and sort of wah pedal, or like the kind of the way that was treated was really intriguing. The note choices were effective, but there were just a lot of interesting guitar, bass, drum patterns and key patterns to appreciate, as well as the brass that came in a little bit further on the side there, with the low and higher ranges sort of put forward nice and neatly going between the sides, the right and left, as well as the claps that came in as an additional sort of mid-range point of groove on the 2s and 4s in that second chorus part. I dig that we didn't just feel the need for one drum kit, we were happy to have more. I think there is such a sweetness to the tone of those guitars, those clean single coils, that we have there, mixing up some blues and sort of jazzy elements alongside those keys at the beginning with some interesting quarter, eighth, and 16th note patterns. The drums were a wonderful accompaniment with a variety of different 8th and 16th note cymbal grooves there, working on beats and syncopated. Very sort of comfortable though, with the quarters pushing that dance groove forward. And we have some crescendos and kick builds and other sort of transfers to not make it too sort of generic or uninteresting. We adjust and when required, we're still keeping it catchy. And there's a chemistry between the vocals and the guitars and organs with how they sort of call and respond to each other within some of those quieter sections, with everything coming together in the hook for a bigger overall sound. I want to give a shout out to the bass as well. I appreciate how we not only stuck with the root notes in the lower end, but we also did some interesting sort of octave patterns there. It was very funky. The mixture of sort of rock, blues, jazz, and funk within this track is, you know, it's commendable, because it can be difficult to put those four together in a track without it seeming overplayed. To be fair, I suppose it's less rocky than the other three, but that's okay. And there are some simmering guitar patterns as well. I was looking for those kind of lightly distorted, crispy ones like around the 1 minute mark, but they're not an all the time thing. I know I said rock, but I kind of mildly regret that, not because I think that it couldn't be rocky, but simply because it's like very clean sounding. I don't think there's anything within this track is trying to sort of be off-putting or sort of antagonistic. It's meant to sort of invite you in and hopefully you enjoy your time with how kind of sort of weirdly soothing it is. Like, you want to groove to it, but it's not too over the top. Thematically, I think the minor leaning to it with some interesting extensions and moments of tension with some minor 7 flat 5s along those lines. We explore our harmonies really neatly and go between them effectively without sort of backing away from the essence of the main sort of styles that we're trying to integrate. We just clearly understand our music theory and composition, and It's just really nice to have some interesting sort of flavors outside the main sort of major and minor triads. The notes that we have on some of those lead elements, such as the organs or the guitars, as well as the main vocals and how they sort of decorate in the upper end, create further extensions and peaks of interest there, but it never becomes too sort of over the top. Just a really tight overall performance as well. No issues whatsoever with how things were played. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering was really effective. I like the balance of different key, drum, guitar, bass, and vocal patterns with the mains and sides as well. There were no weird resonant frequencies in the stereo and frequency spectrum. It was nice one. Stereo, filtering with the brass going backwards and forwards there. And again, just to point to the brass there, the energy from that was more sort of like a celebration of trying to find an emotional equilibrium, I think. But again, because of the inherent sort of like almost legato feel, despite the side chaining of the kicks that you have within this, the brass didn't cut as much, which I think was a smart move. It would have been an interesting process mixing this. The leveling in general was good. I like the amount of dynamic range we have from a compositional perspective. Production nice and tight, nice and loud, bit of pumping, bus compression limiting is handled. Good start to proceedings. Because you have track 2, how's it gonna be? Or how it's gonna be, should I say. Nylons. Interesting tuning to the vocals as well. We've got some interesting effects chains on it. There's like a glow and a chorus to it. I'll talk about it more at the end of this.
You traced your name in the dust on my shelf.
Definitely reverbs as well.
Futures you kept to yourself. Pulled at my threads till the pattern ran clear. You drank from the well, then you left it here. Tell me how it's gonna be. Am I just the shadow where you learn to see? Now you've taken all that you needed from me. Am I anything at all? Tell me how it's gonna be.
There is the hand drums in there.
Tell me how it's gonna be. Folded my days like receipts in your coat. Every small kindness a tally, a note. Your hunger was holy, you called it a dream. I opened my hands, you opened the seam. Tell me how it's gonna be. Am I just the echo of your old debris? Now you've taken what you came to find in me. Am I anything at all? Tell me how it's gonna be. Was I your mirror or your spare key? A quiet room for you to leave the way you never named.
Was that a key change or just a vibration?
Is that what you planned or what you silence where you felt set free. Now you've taken what you came to find in me. Am I anything at all? Tell me how it's gonna be. Ooh, tell me how it's gonna be.
I mean, those lady vocals over the top are hypnotic.
Tell me how it's gonna be.
So that was track 2. how it's gonna be. I mean, the imagery in this track, you traced your name in the dust on my shelf, talked about futures you kept to yourself. I mean, I like the wordplay and what it's trying to sort of put in your head, so to speak, you know. These are sincere, genuine questions, you know, as well as statements. You folded my days like receipts in your coat, every small kindness a tally, a note. It's very clear to understand what we're trying to communicate, though. Basically, you know, I suppose after the previous track, take my word for it, we're now sort of trying to get an answer from that person who is taken rather than given, you know. There's a lack of balance in the transactional relationship that they have, and so they're just in a position where they just feel empty and they just kind of want to know the truth of it all, despite what the damage the person's done and how evident it is that maybe, you know, like, you know, you often, I think there'll be people that can relate to being in the position Jazz is describing, you know, through like whether it's abusive relationships or just simply relationships where like barriers weren't established. And it's a difficult, tough thing to describe, but some of the best music comes from, you know, putting these difficulties on the table and making music out of those. So I think the story was a lot more somber in its approach here, both from sort of Jazz's main vocals and the sort of backing ones. I think that was a sensible decision. To me, I feel like if you'd gone too heavy on a tone or been too aggressive about it, it would have ruined the feel with how it integrated with those guitars there, the hand drums, etc. It was more of a sort of spiritual awakening, I suppose, maybe coming to a point of balance there and realizing you've just got to see reality for what it is as opposed for like trying to dream of an alternate. And there's like a bittersweet sort of like note choice that resonates with those extensions and the chord progressions there, the kind of flamenco Latin feels with the melodies on those kind of like classical guitars. It's kind of wistful, almost like we're kind of thinking of how things could have been. There's like a grief that we're experiencing through that process. But like the song is also relatively consistent. I just appreciate how kind of candid we are with the storytelling and how we continue to sort of display sort of solid vocal technique. There is tuning on Jazz's vocals, and I think it's fine. We're trying to hit the notes cleanly, that's okay. And I think that the backing vocals in that lady are very sort of ethereal with the amount of reverb and sort of lushness of them that we have in parts there, and they're a nice foil to how more straightforward Jazz's parts are texturally in terms of their presence within the arrangement. I think the track itself, you know, with its expression and vocal performance done well and the lyrics making sense alongside that, is well sort of fleshed out at 3 minutes 39. There are some relatively simple ideas on the sort of sub leads there, again from those strings and such. It's more about the groove of the music as you go through the different verses and choruses, including what I presume to be a key change with the parallel major on the end for a bit of an interesting twist there as we maybe come to a realization of sorts. And I think that it's great if that was a key change to be able to include that as a kind of a twist in the tale. It's not something that we included in Take My Word for It, and I think, you know, having a solo section in one track and a key change in another is just a really sort of sensible way to be able to adjust songs and keep them interesting without being too sort of like consistent through an album and making it sort of seem like all the tracks might have the same sort of scenario or situation. I think the use of the cajon, if I'm not mistaken, with the sort of the bass hits and the sort of snares and such was smart alongside the strummed and picked guitar parts there. There's a kind of an airiness and flavor to it that kind of makes it seem a bit more sort of organic and earthy, like we're coming to the earth in order to be able to sort of like coming down to earth, I suppose, should I say. As we go up in our range, I should note around that 2 minute 25 mark, and you have all those different lady vocal layers around the sides of the stereo field. The way the guitar rises alongside that is beautiful. I dig the dynamic range through how the different instrumental layers are positioned, both in terms of their relative intensity dynamically as well as their positions in the frequency spectrum. And it is far more low-key in some of those earlier parts, again, when it's just the guitars and bass and the vocals there. We have a lushness with some of the pads that we have a bit later on, which kind of makes it more sort of A-B side. And there's like, again, these reverb tails throughout in a lot of these tracks, which again makes it seem like we're dreaming of the conversation we've got to have with this person. And there's like sub-16ths as well as the main sort of chord note grooves and eighths as well, which decorates the track rhythmically really neatly. But it also, you know, the track has a few core key components, again, like the guitars, bass, maybe some drums, maybe some bass and a low end there in the pads. And you don't really need to add much more to it than that. It's very sort of somber at the end with just Doc Jazz and the guitar, though. It's a nice way to finish things off without anyone else around them so that they can kind of digest and speak their truth. And we add these sort of like harmonies between the vocals and the guitar parts as they're plucked in the mid to uppers there, and it just becomes more colorful in those choruses and a bit. There's an inherent sadness with the use of those sort of interludes, triads there. I do like the fact that we have that pause as well after that key change interlude. I dig just that pregnant pause there, or just that gap there to be able to sort of sit with it and kind of hear the vibrato from Doc Jazz. It's just smart, you know? It's nonetheless a really safe composition, not a bad thing. It's just, I like that we're keeping things relatively minimalist if we're going to have the vocals the focal point. We really want to tell the story we're doing. I assume it's going to be chronological or sort of like chapterized, and so that's cool. Though thematically, again, it's about those extended harmonies, the major, minor, seventh chords, parallel majors, I think, in that sort of interlude section there, as well as a key change. Having variations in the bass line, sort of like chord progressions, that there's like also that build before the kind of chorus there to sort of switch up the flow of the piece and the cadence of the chords and how they're presented, which makes it more sort of more intriguing. And yeah, honestly, just fundamentals and more. Solid instrumental performance overall. Shitty recording, mixing, mastering. Again, I feel like the effects change we have on the vocals there kind of add to the ether there. I think that we've found a balance between those electronic and sort of acoustic textures, and it doesn't sound overproduced. And so ultimately, no issues with the stereo field or frequency spectrum. Bus compression limiting is handled. And having less of the drums at this point, and having a different type of drum kit, was just great to have an additional separate tone and texture to it that I think resolutely sits well with the surrounding elements. So it's 2 for 2. Because we have Unknown Destination number 3.
No traffic signs, no guiding light. Where will it lead us to? There's clouds above, they're dark and grim. Our headlights dim. Will we see this through? We're gonna need to depend on ourselves. There's nobody there who can help. So search in the depths of your soul. Can you trust me enough to keep it whole? 'Cause you and me, we both don't know where we're really going, but we'll have to keep some stability just to keep it all flowing. There's no place for stagnation, no room for frustration, not until we reach this unknown destination. Let's watch our speed.
Have we used vocal synthesis to kind of get because the way the vocals were so well rhythmically in time with what we're doing there. I'm wondering what we're doing to get that rhythmic use in between those elements.
Some cautions do. Enjoy the view. We have to make the best of it. Let's keep things calm and concentrate. Just calibrate and put up with the rest of it. We're gonna need to depend on ourselves. There's nobody there who can help. So
no, I think it's separate.
So your soul, can you trust me enough to keep it whole? 'Cause you and me, we both don't know where we're really going, but we'll have to keep some stability just to keep it all flowing. There's no place for stagnation, no room for frustration, not until we reach this unknown destination.
Fantastic. Great to hear the saxophone here, man.
To keep some stability just to keep it all flowing. There's no place for stagnation, no room for frustration. Not until we reach this unknown destination. Unknown destination. We're going to unknown destination. Unknown destination. We're going to
Yeah, okay.
unknown destination.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Daft Punk in some parts, eh? So that's probably my favorite track out of the three so far, Unknown Destination. I don't know if I really can equate or connect the lyrics to what I've heard from the song itself. It's almost like the track's trying to paint an image of the city or the location they're going into, almost like they're kind of unsure of being in this sort of like neo-jazzy kind of environment that they're in. Like, there's such vivid color within the harmony and the note choices, instruments and stuff like that. It's just interesting that we're discussing it from the perspective of we might not know where we're going, but we have to maintain stability. So I think that's what Unknown Destination is about. I think it's trying to communicate that they need to sort of rely on each other to be able to pull through this. That even if there's some dark clouds ahead, they're gonna need to sort of like stand strong in order to go through it. I'm wondering if that is after how it's gonna be. I'm kind of trying to place it. But regardless, you know, it's almost like we've surrendered ourselves to how the dynamic is going to be, and we're simply moving forward with whatever comes next on the journey that we're in. I liked how colorful the legato and sort of articulations were on the vocals with this one. Like how we kind of cascaded like that, and how the vocals on top of it, and how we decorated it, and just how fluid and sort of shimmery and shiny it was. It was just a pleasant listen through that. I dig when we explore the full range of our vocals, and we can do so in a fun way that represents a similar energy and intensity to the surrounding elements. It's just good. It just feels good. I like that we had call and response as well as the vocals coming together in certain parts, and that we had enough variety sort of like performatively as well to be able to keep things intriguing for the whole 3 minutes 24. You know, at 3 minutes 24, the track is, again, with that a 2 to 4 minute sweet spot. There's absolutely no filler in this one. I love the transition to the saxophone solo that we had a bit later on. It was just nice to hear sort of a breathiness to that, to hear it sort of dancing around the presentation that Doc Jazz has put forward. It was just cool. You can kind of imagine him kind of sleepily driving through down the highway that they're on, whilst the saxophone player is playing on the top of the cliff nearby. I think it's also cool to have the vocalists going on different sides, the backing lady vocalists going from left to right there to really sort of make it more of a worldly experience there. You know, all these noises and colors and stuff like that are happening around you. You've got da 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 da, like you've got like this kind of funkiness with the keys working the minors, the pentatonics, and the blues, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe use some sort of jazzy modulations between certain chords there, which are quite nice. I think there was one specific chord where we moved it down the way that was a bit of unconventional, but still nonetheless very fun. The use of the riser or the phaser on something, maybe the vocals around that 49-second mark, was just a fun sort of build there. You know, something different to what we've had before. We're continuing to work outside the main sort of like ingredients that are established and trying to put new things forward. It was nice to have the clicks in certain parts there to make the drums a bit more sort of intimate as we work through the chord note groove with the 8th note orients there, with some occasional 16ths across the board from the range of instruments that we have on display there, but the quarters are again are dominant. It was nice to have that kind of no drums though, or a lack of drums in that interlude section. It was before that saxophone solo. It was just cool to allow things to float and not feel the need to push the listener forward, to just allow them to kind of simmer in that ether before we get the alt lead. I mean, I know it's like a given that you maybe don't have drums the entire way through a track, but just allowing the clicks to be the only thing that you hear is just a really neat sort of like spark there. It's just a great way to bring the energy down a little bit before you bring it back up again. I think that when we come up a bit more near the end, around the 3 minute mark, that we start to become a bit more sort of emphatic about what we're trying to accomplish despite the uncertainty with the direction and everything like that. And it's just a no-brainer way of continuing to layer. There's been no point in this album so far where I've been alienated or felt alienated by what we're doing in terms of the instrumental layering. we just have quite a complicated, sort of sophisticated sort of set of different progressions and harmonies there that we navigate carefully in a way which it seems very sort of like deliberate. I'll also give a comment on the bass that I can hear there. I think that's well handled in the low end, you know, nice and tight to the rhythm of the main sort of drums and sort of like groove foundations, but also it explores its octaves a little bit as well. It comes up and it's just nice to, again, not just rely on the root notes, to just do a bit more, be a bit extra with it. But ultimately, a lot of interesting little ideas here, aside from the saxophone solo, which was a bit more sort of developed. But like, you know, the vocal's still the main focal point. You know, I could hear the progressions and for the most part try and sort of identify how that relates to the lyrics. It's just going to maybe be the context of the rest of the album itself in that regard. But it nonetheless sounded really cool. Again, I thought the use of the major minor sevenths there, some of the parallel majors and minors we had, as well as some of the modulations with chords going down there, were just very sort of sensible decisions there that infused that kind of like, again, that not just the jazziness, but the sort of futuristic, sort of like funky kind of tone to it. Kind of reminds me of some of the sort of like Japanese music that I've heard there, some of the city jazz that I've heard from sort of Japan as well, which is kind of cool. I liked this song a lot. I thought it was just a really kind of fun track there with a lot of kind of energy behind it, put in the right places. The studio recording, mixing and mastering, things are typically well leveled, set out within the stereo field as well as the frequency spectrum. You can hear the vocals clearly, regardless of whatever they're doing, with the chain on the microphone, the drums pump and sidechain neatly, bass and everything else are good. And when the saxophone came in, it didn't sound like I was trying to dominate the mix, nor did it sound underdeveloped or weak. It had a presence within the track as well. It's just good. You know, we're covering our bases with this stuff. It's kind of interesting, sort of like glow to the piece overall that kind of lends a bit of romanticism to it. You know, we will see what happens next. But we have track number 4, Be Yourself to Me.
Gone out on my way to be near you. If I didn't need you like earth needs the rain. If there are times when you think I don't hear you, is this what you need to hear me say? The worst you do is good enough for me. Ooh. And the best you do is the best that there can be. So
I like those lines.
Don't go trying to be anything for me. Just come into my arms and be yourself to me. Just come into my arms and be yourself to me. Love so deep knows many emotions. Sometimes it can be like the waves of the sea. But just lay back and enjoy the ocean. 'Cause you got nothing to prove to me. The worst you do is good enough for me. And the best you do is the best that there can be. All I care about is that you care for me. So come into my arms and be yourself to me. Oh, come into my arms and be yourself to me. There have been times when I try to control you, just thinking that's how love is meant to be. But I found a much better way to console you. me. And the best you do is the best that there can be. All I care about is that you care for me. So come into my arms and be yourself to me. Just come into my arms and be yourself to me.
Hey, more saxophone. Nice. And be yourself to me. That was charming. That was Be Yourself to Me, track number 4. Kind of charming. The worst you can do is good enough for me, and the best you can do is the best that can ever be. So don't go trying to be anything for me. Come into my arms and just be yourself to me. Be yourself to me. Yeah, I get it. I understand what we're saying here. It's an interesting sort of story we're telling overall. I think this is a story about self-acceptance and just knowing that you'll love someone, or if it's unconditional love, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I'm not really sure how that relates to how it's going to be or Unknown Destination. I'm just trying to sort of figure out whether this is a variety box album, at least sort of lyrically, with different people that are involved, or if it's in chronological order. Maybe part of the Unknown Destination, the journey they're going there, is realizing they just kind of have to be themselves along that process, and it's a metaphorical or figurative journey. I mean, clearly it could be both. I don't think they're literally driving somewhere that they don't know. But I think that it's an interesting track regardless. I feel like there is a quiet, sort of like well-balanced intimacy to this piece on Doc Jazz's part. I think that just simply having themselves singing to this person, again with vocal harmonies where sort of like related, but nonetheless, it's just a really sort of pleasant vocal performance. Great use of vibrato in certain sections there. We have moments to just appreciate the vocals by themselves, but they also integrate and play well with the other surrounding elements. Again, you have more of those hand drums that were played earlier, so I'm glad that other sort of instruments are returning as we go through the piece there. It's very R&B-ish. It reminds me a lot of 90s music in that regard. There's like this kind of warmth from the keys that we have in the mid-range that adds kind of a cozy sort of like nighttime feel to it. I like the staccatos and some of the accented notes, even though the type of production we have on board kind of chokes it a little bit and doesn't allow for too much production-based dynamic range. Yeah, the strings add a nice sense of warmth and typically roll with those sort of like major triads. There's nothing that is trying to sort of be too distracting from the tenderness of the moment. And the kind of flamenco classical guitar that we have there is nice with the sort of like slides and bits of hammer-ons we have occasionally there. We're not trying to sort of like overvoice or sort of sugarcoat things there. It's more to sort of provide a ground bed for Doc Jazz to sing on. And there are some interesting sort of unconventional chord progressions with that bum, 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 and modulations there chromatically around the 139 mark, but I think that's cool, that's sensible. It's just a nice way of adjusting sort of feel and expectation and just not making things too sort of monotonous harmonically. It can also just be a nice way to go from a note within two keys of each other, or two sort of like a whole tone of each other, but you just gotta be really careful how you do it. If you do it too often, it becomes a bit distracting. I think coming down after that point around the 3 minute mark where you have that pause and then just the guitars come in, it's just nice to have a moment to sort of breathe and appreciate what came before it, especially after that sort of high note there, you know, letting that glow in the ether. And then you have the saxophone return, and what's kind of neat about that is it doesn't just have its own sort of solo section, it also calls and responds to the vocals as well in the outro section, so there's a nice bit of chemistry there. And like while the drums are absent for a reasonable amount of time there, when they do come in, it's just a mixture of different sort of snare, tom, and hi-hat patterns, especially there. The 16ths, they add a sort of shimmer to the track there, outside of simply being a way to sort of pulse the mix. And I do think the bass is even more active in this one. It dances not only through the triad or arpeggio notes of that, but it also does some transitions to get to certain root notes one after the other that are maybe a bit more unconventional or sort of like jazzy. It's just, they're difficult to kind of put forward unless you're comfortable working outside the diatonic to an extent. And I'm just glad that we have that freedom to do so. But it's definitely been an interesting album with the different styles of tracks that we've had through this. I feel like Be Yourself, to me, again with the R&B stylings, it does kind of connect well with the subject matter. The vocal style has a sort of a textural similarity or connection, at least niches well with what's going on with the keys or the guitars or bass drums or sort of strings. Not out of place performance-wise. Thematically, again, I think we're not trying to be too abrasive with any unconventionals, so like mostly diatonics, but some of the chromatic sort of modulations with chords between parts were really neat. And it was just cool to have a lot of different instruments sort of decorate the piece in a way where there was just room for everything without making things too sort of overcomplicated. Yep, sevenths, triads, parallel or majors. The vocals often coming in to sort of support those and add more sort of life and vigor in the high end for those. Kind of a wistful kind of ghostly layer on it, which is kind of beautiful at the same time. Honestly, sort of well handled in terms of the progressions of it. It was just good to have, again, different parts to the track, different sort of like movements or bass lines to not have things be too sort of overdone. And the studio recording, mixing and mastering, similar comments to what I've had prior. Leveling, sort of panning has been done well. There, again, the album doesn't have a lot of dynamic range production-wise. I just think they wanted to have a commercially loud track, but I don't think it's choked either. The vocals aren't overproduced, and ultimately, it's just another feather in the cap, so to speak. More to Life, track number 5.
Most people are just chasing money. They can't see there's never enough. They're desperate for milk and honey, especially when the going gets tough. But what about love and compassion? Isn't that supposed to be dear? They tell me that just ain't the fashion, and everyone's making it clear you only live once now. What will you leave behind? You're telling me
Oh, what a cute little synth lead that was.
that rules your mind. How can life be a transaction? Just a matter of budgets and bills. Frankly, I don't see the attraction. Those numbers are nothing but frills. 'Cause value is not your possessions, it's what you mean to others that counts. Just know that there's more to life, more to life. Make it all about love while you're around.
Okay, that's a somber way to end that. Kind of stark, but that's okay.
When your pockets are full, there are people who call you their friend all the time. But you know that the friendship is feeble. They won't be around when you're left with no doubt. As soon as you find your health lacking, you know there's no price tag on that. You'll find that the coins you've been stacking can't match the act of love that you need so bad. You only live once now. What will you leave behind? You're telling me somehow it's the cash that rules your mind.
Nice switch up here at the end.
Just know that there's more to life, more to life. Make it all about love while you're around.
See, those are fun symphonies.
More to life. Make it all about love. Just know that there's more to life, more to life. Make it all about love. 'Cause there's more to life.
I mean, okay, that was just another really solid tune. More to life. Because value is not your possessions, it's what you mean to others that counts. Just know there's more to life. Make it all about love while you're around. And it talks about like people not being real friends only when you've got money there as well. You know, it's okay. I understand what this fifth track is about. It's one of those songs where I feel like while I respect and appreciate the fact that it's 4 minutes, it could have been 2.5. It's just I feel like, I mean, no, it couldn't have. To be fair, you needed that second verse to be able to offer the thing about the friends. Not really being your friend's part, that friendship is feeble. So forget I said that, that's to be fair. That's literally the reason why you'd have a song more than 2.5 minutes, is if you had another verse where it was like, oh, this is why maybe we're talking about this, or this is additional context. So that's cool. That's alright. That's More to Life, track number 5 for today. I feel like this is a bit of a vibe shift from a lot of the tracks we've talked about earlier. So I'm not sure how to place Unknown Destination at this point. But if we just like approach it from its own perspective, it is a song where I think we discuss things in a way that's similar to previous expressions throughout this album. It's a more assertive. That while you're around part, the delivery of that is kind of terse. It's a mood where, yeah, you don't have infinite time on this earth, so we shouldn't take it for granted. And I do have to appreciate the fact that I personally resonate with it. I do, you know, I know I buy stuff as a human being when I don't feel that good. I understand that interpersonal relationships are important, but then I think it's also worth potentially considering outside of this album review whether the reason that I want to buy things is because of those interpersonal relationships in the first place. I think that this is a nicely positive thing that we have here, where we're sort of discussing it more from the, if we are miserable and lonely, for example, it's good to sort of reach out and find connections and find friends. And I think that's a beautiful thing there. I feel like the angle that we're approaching it from is wholehearted and it's kind, and I think that's really cool. So I think, again, we navigate the complex harmonies really effectively there. We articulate and enunciate well. We have these varying sort of like slow rises with vocals, and it's very sort of dramatic. There's like almost an envelope kind of effect there. We have an incredible tightness with some of those backing vocals as well, how they are in tune with us and the rhythmic phrasing of those. I like the sidechaining and the vocal production in general, with how kind of active it is and how much it's trying to keep you interested and keep you engaged. I think that this is music where like, it's like pop, right? It's pop music. And part of me is just kind of sort of appreciate the technicality and intricacy of the composition outside of the fact that it is trying to be pleasant to listen to. It really is the antithesis of a challenging listen. Not that it's just generic or anything like that. It's just more that even if there are slightly spicy parts, there are unexpected chords that appear. And if we have sort of like not the constant groove the entire time, we switch things up with some sort of offbeats or stops or syncopated elements there. It has this inherent sort of four to the floor kind of feel to it, which is just easy to sort of groove and like we handle the fundamentals whilst telling the story on top really neatly. I think just to close on the vocals before I move on, because I know I'm getting on a tangent a little bit, it's a piece where we go to the end of it and we kind of know we could be talking about the I'm not around part, where we kind of fake out, go into our high range, and then we do our double outro there. I thought that was kind of clever to kind of switch things up in that regard. That was really cool. I thought that the understated flow of the varying sort of like kick, snare, and cymbal patterns on the drums was great there, as I mentioned, with the chord note groove, with the underneath 8th and 16ths. I thought the guitars with the funkiness out and the picking there, the kind of Daft Punk kind of funky kind of flow to the harmonies was nice. We have dynamic range with how some things suddenly go from less power muted to more sort of open and expressive, and the track kind of contracts and sort of pushes itself back out when required. We have some really cool synth lead elements, like that synth solo that we had. The end just had a great sort of tone to it, some wide vibratos and stuff like that. It was just fun to sort of have those really sort of invigorating progressions. I think we also had some sort of saxophone cut back in as well. It's more like a kind of thing. It's just great to have previous lead elements come in and sort of expand upon, like to add to the current roster. To be fair, that could have been like a saxophone kind of synth kind of thing. I think also there's some distortion on the vocals near the end for a bit of a kind of rustic, kind of like angsty feel to it. Almost like we're frustrated with you know, the fact that people don't understand how much there is to life, you know, without the frills. Yeah, honestly, sort of like well controlled, sort of tight transitions, clear transitions between parts, tight instrumental performance for that night out of place. Yeah, really well decorated. Thematically, it's minor 7th leaning there, so it's not sad, it's just more kind of nuanced in its approach there. There's some darkness in regard to how we feel about the subject matter, but we're not sort of down in the dumps about it. We're still moving forward and kind of grooving along to the fact that these people are going to make their mistakes regardless, and at least we know what we're doing. So ultimately, I think, yeah, the chord choices with, again, the occasional chromatics outside the diatonic are by virtue of being chromatic, it's outside the diatonic, but you know what I mean, outside the major and minor scales, it's good. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering, similar comments to, I had just new things, adjustments, like again, the modulation and filtering of those like synth solos and the way they're presented with the vibratos, the distortion on the vocals near the end. Otherwise, very consistent in quality to the other sort of 4 tracks we've had so far. It's a well-produced album. I do like the tone of it overall. There's just a lot to sort of take in and appreciate. And I kind of feel like this is an album which you maybe want to take your time with, as opposed to sort of like absorbing it all at once. And just because each of these tracks is pretty good. You can kind of sit there and think about it for a moment afterwards. Get Real, track number 6. That snare slaps, dude. Oh, Tom Phil.
I may say you're a dreamer, and you're not the only one. But if I tell you you're a schemer, you may not take it in good fun. If things worked out to your advantage, it doesn't mean they always will. Or go ahead and think that you will manage, but one day you may have to pay the bill. Feel free to ignore my observation.
Oh, ticking sounds like a clock, right?
Just don't raise your expectations. Get real. Life is not a simple game. Get real. You don't get to shift the blame. Get real. What if it all comes falling down? Get real. What goes around will come around. You're so smug it ain't even funny. So convinced you got it right, but to get value for your money, you may have to drop the fight. You're a dreamer, like I told you, 'cause you can't see your plans will fail. If your hammer still controls you, you just think everything's a nail. Feel free to ignore my
I love the falsetto though.
observations, but just don't raise your expectations. Get real. Life is not a simple game.
So that was Get Real, track number 6 for today. That was another solid one. If things worked out to your advantage, it doesn't always mean they will. Go ahead and think that you will manage. One day you may have to pay the bill, but feel free to ignore my observations, but just don't raise your expectations. Yeah, I mean, like, I get it. I understand that. The Get Real, that's their use of the hook line in that chorus, and then Doc Jazz further elaborating on that. It's kind of like the crowd chanting around the person and Doc Jazz sitting with them on a sofa telling them what's going on there. I think the track, yeah, it's about people who are maybe got their heads up in the clouds, but they need to understand that they can be there all they want. It's just that they've got to come back down to earth at some point. Maybe you're not the kind of saint you think you are in your head with that fabricated, alternate reality you're ideating. It's interesting. I think the vocals and the hook section especially are done well. We have some great falsetto patterns as well from Doc Jazz. I like the backing vocals from the lady and near the end as well, the different layers on the sides and the center, nice and colorful and sort of fragrant in the upper register there. Similar comments to what I've had previously at this point. Not a lot of new stuff to add from this point onwards, to be honest, but I will still commend the fact that there is that consistency there. Solid head and chest, voice, vibrato, legato, articulation is neat. And there's a sense of sort of quiet charisma to a lot of this as well that makes it more interesting to listen to. Track itself at 3 minutes 53 has verses and choruses and instrumental breaks and stuff like that. I dig that. I think that's sort of how these tracks have gone throughout this album. That's how they will continue. That's a tried and tested formula. The combination of different vocal takes plus the guitars and the keys at the start of the piece make it sound nice and lush from the beginning. We're definitely not taking the listener's attention for granted. The drum tone though, the drums when they come in around that 20-second mark, they sound huge. The snare in particular has this kind of oomph to it that kind of smacks into the cans a little bit, and I like that. I like the body of that. I think that this is something I'll talk about in the end of the track, right? In the end of the review, should I say, in the final conclusion section. I just wish there was a little bit more production dynamic range. It sounds like a loud album that kind of consistently remains loud the entire time, or a similar intensity, despite differences in the compositional dynamic range, like what the instruments are doing. It just sounds like things are glued tightly enough that it's kind of the same volume from start till finish. So while I appreciate the musicality, the performance, and a lot of what's going on, if I'm honest at this point, it's good to listen to, but it just sounds a bit too constant in terms of the intensity of the post-production compression and stuff like that. There's the entire time through the track, and that's not a criticism. It's probably just the fact that we're working well within our root notes and we've got a certain kind of pulse to things, but nonetheless it's just me being open, so it's not a lack of interest. And that's just a more modern production kind of thing where we do tend to want louder recordings, and it just ends up being a louder experience across an album. The 16th that we have with those drums though, as well as the different guitar and bass and key parts though, are just really interesting from a cadence and pacing perspective, as well as how they kind of fill different niches within those subdivisions of the beats and are presented. It's fun. It's a fun performance. The ticking that you have around the 1 minute 05 mark with the observation part is a nice, cool sort of change of pace as well. Again, it's just nice to have that tick as opposed to a sort of a continuous drum kit there. It just gives you a moment to sort of cleanse the palette. And some of the other brass and sort of saxophone bits that we have there, or trumpet parts that we have, such as around the 135 mark, just add nice airiness and sort of bit of further interest within the stereo field, whilst sort of preserving a lot of the main sort of core chordal and funk sort of harmonic ideas. Yeah, so ultimately, well balanced, no complaints in that regard. Yeah, see, even in that 2 minute 24 mark, I like when things come down with the rim shots and the hi-hats and the kicks and stuff like that, but they don't sound quieter again because they lack a post-production dynamic range. So it's I want to listen through more of this album and understand a little sort of compositional nuances and stuff like that. And there's a wonderful sparkle and presence to some of those key parts, especially when they go up into the upper register. It's not an EQing thing. The 28-second mark is gorgeous. And we decorate with our voice as well. Lots of lovely vibratos. And the Get Real thing is just so cool from a perspective with how it's EQ'd and filtered as well. Yeah, I think I'm starting to ramble. Effectively, I think compositionally, performatively, well handled. Lots of different sort of drum and sort of like instrumental layering per section as well to sort of keep things sounding fresh. Studio production, recording, mixing, mastering. Aside from the compression of the post-production, I'm EQing, EQing sort of nice and wide surrounding you in the headphones. Vocals again, the variety of different ideas we have vocally on the microphone from the mains to the sides are great. It's loud, bit of pumping. 6 for 6. I'm just going to take a moment and then we're going to go through track 7. Let's do it. You do you.
Left me on red in the middle of a meltdown. You were out front taking pictures of your new shoes. I'm on the floor, you're checking how the lens looks. Guess I was just a backdrop. Then you good news, you do you, I do me. If your world's that small, I'll just let you be. You do you, but you won't do me. You can love that mirror, it's not my scene. You do you, I do me. Got my heart to heal, my soul to treat. Let me have my peace, girl. I'll do me. Keep that. Let me have my peace. Tornado talk, every story's all about you. I bring my storm, you change the channel on my sky. You're like a sun that never asks if I'm burning. I'm just a plant in the window watching time go by. You do you, I'll do me. If your world's that small, I'll just let you be. You do you, but you won't do me. You can love that mirror, it's not my scene. You do you, I'll do me. Got my heart to heal, my soul to keep. I'll do me. You can keep that crown, let me have my peace. Yeah.
I mean, those triplets 16th on the hi-hats are kind of dope.
You can keep that crown, let me have my peace. You drain my light like a charger with a cut. Oh, I pour my days in your cup, still you say it's not full. You're at the head of the table, counting your praises. I'm on the edge with an empty plate, you and all I'm a fool. I'll probably your background to your headline dream. Cutting the strings on this puppet routine. Found a bird in your cage and I snap the key. Let my fate write the rest of the story for me. Do you, I do me. Got my heart to heal, my soul to keep. I'll do me. Let me have my peace. Yeah. I'll do me. Let me have my peace.
I mean, there's a nice trade-off to this guitar solo here. Nope, that's cool. No, honestly, like, you do you, track number 7. You do you, but you won't do me. You can love that mirror, it's not my scene. You do you, I'll do me. Got my heart to heal, my soul to treat. Right, so I understand it. So this track is more sort of discussing, yeah, I can't figure out this album. Hey, what we're trying to sort of accomplish here. It seems like we're just going through a difficult sort of toxic relationship. You Do You is a song about kind of us being destroyed by what the other person has done and then just completely just not really caring about us at all, you know. And even if they want to still have continued interactions with us, we're just sick of being used by that person. And we want to sort of move away from that sort of stratosphere and find our own place to sort of come back to a healthy equilibrium. Again, just a really comfortable vocal performance, you know, well handled, sort of like hidden chest voice. I liked the backing vocals as well. Like the vocals in this track are handled Lots of interesting sort of melodies there. We coalesce with the harmonies really neatly, even with some of the more difficult extensions and sort of triads that we have. This is kind of so smoothness with our vibratos there. We hit the notes cleanly. No issues whatsoever in terms of the performance itself or the way it's been written. There's even some sort of like radio filter, kind of like phone call kind of speaker stuff going on around 2-minute 24 mark, which is just a nice way to represent vocals a bit more differently. It's cool to have that be present there, just a different way of communicating to make things a bit more low key in that part. And we seem just like we're trying to sort of tell this person it. We're not trying to be too aggressive or overbearing with it. It's fine. It works well. The track itself at 3 minutes 11 has varying sort of like verses, the choruses. It has a guitar solo near the end as well as like a little interlude thing as well. It was kind of cool to hear the guitar kind of thrash about and shred about a bit, work the pentatonic sort of fretboard and work well. Not trying to be too sort of belligerent outside of what's already established in terms of the progressions and bass lines. Just having an alt lead was good, alongside some of the saxophone and sort of synth lead stuff we've had in the past. And the guitar is introduced pretty sort of early on into the piece as well. It's not trying to hide itself away. And we're being relatively subtle as we continue through the piece, having those hi-hat rim shots as well. That sort of eighth note groove on the cymbals with the chord note kicks as well is kind of cool. Phrase of sort of synth pads as well to kind of add a floatiness and sort of neo-funk sort of tonality to it. And again, we explore our vocal harmonies well enough that when we integrate it with the rest of the guitar, bass, drums, etc., it's just really well fleshed out. And great use of filters and bringing stuff up in post as well as just before that final chorus there, just to stress, right? I don't have any issues and haven't found any issues with how things have been composed within the piece. There's clearly more than enough going on with the way it's been written, with the different sort of note choices. No issues whatsoever in terms of the actual presentation of the music and especially how it interacts with the vocals of the story that we're telling. There's not a note out of place. It's very tight. Thematically, sort of that bluesy kind of extension leaning there where we're not trying to sort of overcommit too much to the minor leaning of it. It's like we're trying to not be too sort of like upset about it. It's clearly mucking us up and we're clearly sort of affected by it, but we don't want to let the person know that we're this affected by it. We're just really hesitant to get too sort of like real about it. And so it's very kind of polished and like well presented and kind of pretty sounding. We're just trying to make an album that's easier to listen to. And that's fine. The studio recording, mixing and mastering, again, it has that consistency with the perception of it. There's a frequency in there that might just be a little bit too constant for my taste. I do wonder if it's a sub frequency that I'm hearing and it's kind of bothering me a little bit. Something that's like a bit less audible. It can happen sometimes. But then again, like it's another thing I want to mention is that in terms of actual presentation of the different elements of the drum kit, the toms, kicks, snares, the guitars, bass drums, like the brass, the synths, the keys, etc. Everything is pretty well handled. It's not like there's issues with the actual mixing of it, or the leveling, or the EQing, or the filtering, or anything like that. And the vocals themselves are well put in there too. The panning is exquisite. It's it's just you kind of need to be that on point to get it loud. It's just loud. But yeah, honestly, things, despite that, don't sound overproduced or it does sound a bit overcompressed to me, but aside from that, that's a stylistic choice. I think you do you. I think if there was anything I'd say about this one, I'll save it for the end. It's just more of a subjective thing than anything else. I want to sort of get my thoughts on that at the end, but we've got Change, track number 8 for today. Let's do it. 2 more to go.
Can you feel the wind of change fresh upon your face?
So I want to just quickly say something, and I feel like this is more me being sort of transparent as a reviewer. I would have liked for the vocals at the start of Change to have been cleaner than this. I understand we've got a vocal chain that we're really happy with, subjectively, and that's fine. It's cool if we like the vocals the way they are. We want to have that kind of lush reverb to it. It could have been so much more affecting if we just had it dry. If we just had it kind of blonde.
Smell the
Like kind of Johnny Cashed it a bit, you know?
Nature space. Do you hear the song of birds announcing the new day? Do you sense the birth of words that promise a new way? No matter how today may seem the final way,
Great parallel major there.
it never stays the same. It always goes away. No matter how we feel, the one thing that is real, you can't hold on forever to those chains. Hail the wind of change. Can you see that shining light bursting?
Interesting use of an 808 there. That's an 808, right?
Can you watch it burn so bright it almost hurts the eyes? Do you touch the morning dew that evenly was sprayed and washed away without ado the dust of yesterday? No matter how today may seem the final way, it never stays the same. It always goes away. No matter how we feel, the one thing that is real, you can't hold on forever to those chains. Hail the wind of change. Can you feel the wind of change welcome like the dawn? Everything gets rearranged as today is drawn. Do you sense the mystery of what is yet to come? The breeze erasing history, time beating its drum. No matter how today may seem the final way, it never stays the same. It always goes away. No matter how we feel, the one thing that is real, you can't hold on forever to those chains. Hail the wind of change. Just let it go. Just let it go, let it blow. Can you feel the wind of change?
Now, see, I know that maybe I've been a bit spicy for the last couple of tracks, and again, it's just me being transparent, I'm trying to be balanced, but I will concede that I think that this is just one of the more sort of unique sounding tracks within the album for me, and I do really like Change. I think it's really good. I like the way that the guitars and the saxophones coalesce in a more sort of sleepy, low-key way. I like the kind of retardando that we had at the end there, where things kind of slowed down more organically there, and you kind of hear them come together like that. I thought that was really neat. I mean, these lyrics are well, you know. Do you hear the song of birds announcing the new day? Do you sense the birth of words that promise a new way? I do like that way that we're phrasing things. The imagery that is being put forward there is good. You can't hold on forever to those chains. How the wind of change. Yeah, so effectively, I think this is more about accepting that things will adjust regardless of what you want, regardless of what you think. It is the one constant of life. being change. And I adore that. I think that it's nice to have that in an album where I still haven't entirely figured out what is going on within it, aside from it being different subjects that I think are intertwined. But nonetheless, I appreciate the story that's being told there. I like that we're having the type of, again, I know I mentioned that I would have preferred the vocals to have not had that reverb on, and I maintain that. I think that the vocals in this track were overproduced, and I would say this album did maybe benefit from having different, and I know that's a difficult thing post-production wise, because especially when you're trying to level out vocal change, it's just easier to have one, right? I get it. I understand that. But you just, yeah, again, I think outside of my thoughts on the processing for this track, how the vocals were presented, I understand we're going for that kind of 90s kind of balladesque kind of perspective for it. That kind of more sort of like low-key, soothing, tender approach to the way we communicate, that gentleness is important, especially with someone who is afraid of change. So I get it. I think the expression within this track was appropriate there. I think it was sensible, and the backing vocals are nice and soothing in response as an aside to that. So I think generally the vocals within Change are solid. We have some nice legato articulations there, such as around 1 minute 13 there. We are comfortable not only hitting the notes we need to, but looping between others in a way which doesn't seem uncomfortable. We're very comfortable in our range. We go into a head voice, a chest voice with a rumble with a vibrato there at the end of that, and it's just really good. Honestly, so I think the vocals and Change are very well done. The expression matches the lyrics, matches the technique. Then it's just the rest of the track where at 4 minutes 17 is outside that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot. I don't think we overstayed our welcome within this one. I don't think there was any filler. I like that parallel major that we had in some of the sort of bridges, if I'm not mistaken. I just thought it was a really sensible way to sort of switch things up there, make it seem a bit more sort of positive, like we're leaning into the change as opposed to being fearful of it. It's just smart. I think it would have been a little bit too sort of like predictable to have had the diatonics, that's a major minor key presented anyways. So it's, especially with other tracks throughout the album being written with ample use of those kind of outside notes, I think, which is just good. And I did, to be fair, with all my comments on wanting adjustment of range, I do appreciate what was going on within the 2 minute 30 mark where things really came down. It was just sensible to have an extended period of just, it was good. It's nice. It was just very, again, lush with the reverbs on some of the saxophone parts, the hits on the hand drums there, the bass was very thick and full. I do think it was an 808 or something along those lines, which is an interesting thing to pair aside the guitars that we had and the saxophone. But I think it's just, if that is the case, it was nice to take a risk. You know, I feel like it paid off. It was definitely authoritative, wasn't it? I don't think we really needed to do too much outside of the tambourines and sort of like cajon or kind of like hand percussion there. We just had a track where it had its core foundations established. Again, it went down at that 2 minute 30 mark for a bit of respite. And then we came back up for a final go before we came to a finish with the saxophone and the guitar. And it was just nice to have alt lead color and decorate as well as the main vocals and sides. Ultimately, well fleshed out, not a note out of place. Thematically, I think Major Leaning made a lot of sense with this. Had some suspended chords in it as well, if I'm not mistaken, there for a bit of a glow to it. Or maybe ninths there. It's just a very pleasant sounding piece. It's like gently communicating to someone that change is okay, and I like that a lot. I think that's really cool. We had additions of layers of instruments as we go through the piece as well. Just like, again, this is probably one of my favorite tracks off of the album, but the overall sort of how things came together within it. I think studio production wise, again, it was just nice to have some sort of quieter parts within it, in addition to the more pushed parts. The vocals, guitar, bass, drums, saxophones, everything else, hand drums, etc. well leveled within the frequency spectrum in the stereo field, no wide resonant frequencies. Bass had plenty of room to breathe. Vocals did too. Nice and loud, bit of pumping. Well, not really pumping to be fair, because we didn't have those kicks come in. But yeah, okay. I'm feeling good about this one. We got one more track to go. That track being number 9, Gratitude. What will it be? What will the culmination of our entire experience be within this track?
Didn't I stand by you every moment? Didn't I reach out a helping hand? Didn't I bear with the pain and the torment? Didn't Didn't I show you I understand? Wasn't I there in your times of trouble? Wasn't I here at your back and call? Why did you have to burst my bubble? Cash in the prize and then build a
Oh, I didn't know if I liked that breakbeat there.
Didn't I say I'd spare no expense? Tell you the truth, I don't care what you call it. Say I'm a fool, I won't take no offense. Where would you be if I hadn't been faithful? Wouldn't you be in a pool of disgrace? Is it too much for you to be grateful?
I think I figured it out. I think the bass is resonant within the mix. The drums aren't as thick or full as I'd expect in a situation like this. I think the bass might be a bit resonant in the low end. I'm wondering if we have EQ'd the bass.
Is it a chore to put a smile on my face?
Yeah, that's a resonant bass response.
Never again, love. Never again. Don't ask where, love. 'Cause that was then. Live in peace with your attitude. You preclude the gratitude. All that's left now is platitude. Won't be rude, just not understood. Oh, oh. I said never again. I love you, but never again. I know you'll never admit that you wronged me. I know you'll always believe you're right. Taken for granted is how you reward me. And nothing can make you see the light. Don't think I'll ever cease to love you. Don't think I'll ever cease to care. Gone is the time when there's nothing above you. Gone is the time when I'm always there. Live in peace with your attitude. You preclude the gratitude. All that's left now.
Bit of vocal fry there, nice.
Won't be rude, just not understood. Live in peace.
Did we have a choir or a gospel choir for this one?
You
I wonder if we did.
the gratitude. All that's left now is platitude. Won't be rude, just not understood. No gratitude, my love. There's just no gratitude. Do you know I'm talking about you? There's just no gratitude. Never again, never again. Never again, love. Never again. Don't ask where, love. 'Cause that was then.
Okay, that was Gratitude. That was track number 9 for today. Yeah, I get what's going on with that one. I think it was great. If we did have a choir involved in that, I thought that was really cool. I liked having their different voices doing little sort of vocal parts as well. Where would you be if I hadn't been faithful? Wouldn't you be in a pool of disgrace? Is it too much for you to be grateful? Is it a chore to put a smile on my face? Where would you be if I know you will never admit that you wronged me. I know you will always believe you're right. Taken for granted is how you reward me. Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, live in peace with your attitude. You'll preclude the gratitude. I kinda get that one. Yeah, I think effectively we're closing this album out by saying, hey, things have changed now, and you really need to accept that I'm no longer to be taken for granted. You weren't thankful for how I was with you, and you sort of stood on me and trod on me, and it was just terrible. I hated it, and I'm just done. I'm sick of it. Unknown Destination, I think we know where we are now. It's an interesting way to end an album. I get it. I feel like we have gone through a journey. I think we'll talk about it more in the overall conclusion, but I think if I speak about the fundamentals of this before we do that, the vocals in this track, again, I love the choir, the sound of the big sort of like voices behind Doc Jazz. It was nice to have them have their own parts, sort of with the difference. I think there's a male vocalist and a lady one sort of singing over top there as well. It was great. But then Doc Jazz was consistent with his sort of like tenure throughout as well, and we were left with a piece which sounded a bit, larger than life. It was a very full sounding track immediately. 4 minutes 38, outside of the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, but I don't think we overstayed our welcome with this. I thought it was typically sort of well presented with a variety of different sort of key guitar, bass, and drum parts there, very thick and full sounding. The bass was dominant throughout the vast majority of this, and I liked the tone and the fullness of it. I just think it kind of affected how the drums were presented, and the guitars were, there was no issues with the guitars though. The bar chords that we presented, different arpeggios and lead lines were very, very good. And outside of the kick drum there, I mean, you could hear the cymbals clearly. I wasn't necessarily a massive fan of that kind of, some of the break beats or kind of like offbeat sort of fill transitions we had before the chorus parts, if I'm not mistaken. Not because I dislike that kind of drumming. I think it's really cool. You can switch things up. But I think because the bass was dominant, it maybe sort of like hid some of the kick parts or some of the things that were sort of letting you know before you went into that was going to occur. So it was just a very sudden snare out of the kind of ether and it, kind of slapped at you a bit. But again, we had the hi-hat sort of shimmers there, went quieter bits with the vocals, and everything was very sort of decorated and colorful. I remember mentioning there was an overall sort of 16-note pattern to the way the different sort of organs, bass, and guitars and stuff went over each other. Compositional, very intricate. We had lots of interesting colors and textures and timbres within the piece there, even when things were quieter, In a sense, this feels like a big finish because of how much is going on within it. We have some vocal parts that kind of dance over top of some of the lead lines we had in Subleasing is in terms of the call and responses that we have, right? And I think that's fun, and it's not an all the time thing. We adjust as we go through the piece, we adjust as we go through to not take the listener's attention for granted. And we have some sort of stops there and some big sort of moments there before we transition into the next part there. There's not just a consistent sort of, even though that's quite a steady sounding song. Yeah, it's just, I go to that 3 minute 28 mark and the woman just feels like she's being drowned out by everything surrounding her because how tight things are. Yeah, there's almost like so much that it's hard to take in everything on a first listen basis. So you're going to probably have to listen through it more than once to get all the nuances, but nonetheless, it's very good. And yet, fundamentally, if you ignore the complexity of the arrangement and what the different instruments are doing there, it's very easy to sort of listen along to the vocals and appreciate that. I think it's just when you try to take everything at once, it's a bit much. And it kind of remains a similar note the entire time, so that when it finishes, it's just kind of like, it's done. Like, I'm not sure if it was almost a bit too busy sometimes. It would have been nice to have taken away some of the layers to kind of simplify parts, to have more of a push-pull to it. But ultimately, again, not a note out of place, tight instrumental performance. Thematically, I'm not even sure if it's major or minor. I think it's like a major, but it's a dominant 7th kind of major, so it's got kind of a bluesy sort of feel to it. Like, we're singing the blues about the gratitude that we haven't experienced, and we just kind of pissed at the situation. I think the music is it's telling more, or giving more sort of personality than the vocals are. Although to be fair, there's vocal fry in certain places there. There's a bit of raunchy notes to it, which is good. And again, the lady that's singing near the end, she's just belting. It's huge sounding, it's just a bit kind of subdued because of how other things are working within the track. But yeah, I think I mentioned that the bass is dominant, so that's the studio side of things. Everything else is well leveled. You can hear the different keys, guitar, drums, etc. Everything within the piece. No complaints about things outside of the main sort of resonant frequency within the low end. I don't even know if it was too compressed. It was definitely too compressed in this one because the bass was pushing it. And yeah, it's just a shame that we couldn't have more dynamic range for the backing vocalists in part. But we're going to talk about these tracks more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of these 9 tracks off an album from an act named Doc Jazz titled Unknown Destination. In this section, we're going to be providing an overall analysis of the album from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique. And then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this album is about? I think if I was to take a gander at what this album is about, because this isn't going to be a per track thing, because we already had those many conclusions. It's going to be about my thoughts overall and what I think it's about. It's about someone who has been through a relationship with another, and they've just gone through a whole lot of trials and tribulations with them, and they're just really at a point where they need that person to kind of mature and kind of understand how they've taken things for granted and how they're not really in the same, they're dreaming, and they're just kind of accepting how they are. They've accepted that things have changed, and the feelings they had are maybe in the past, and they've tried to allow them to be themselves, but it's just gone horribly wrong. They thought they could take their worst, and it just didn't end up being that way. It's not a healthy situation. Could have been kind of sort of like toxic relationship that they've been through. And in the end, I think we just get to a point where the destination is either indifference or acceptance, and of the fact that they will not be the person we need, even though that's what they might want. It just can't work. And it's a shame in a way, because there were some moments of hope, like Unknown Destination, Be Yourself to me, but that's the kind of roller coaster ride emotionally we're taken through this album. And I think in part that is credit to Doc Jazz for structuring it that way. You know, you're not really sure what it's like until the end. I gotta give him credit for that. The vocal performances across this album are really well handled. I liked, especially the gospel and gratitude. I liked Doc Jazz's main vocals, very comfortable in head, just a falsetto. Great use of vibrato there, comfortable in their vocal range. They know how to sort of work both by themselves as well with the harmonize with other vocalists. So there's also some other sort of like lady vocals doing like backing ground parts as well. There might be some other sort of singers involved as well. We just decorate these tracks so neatly with our different takes. We have a consistency with the approach of our vocals, with a lot of like compression EQ, a bit of tuning sometimes, or stylization. There were some tracks where I think I mentioned it might be Get Real or something along those lines, where I would have wanted a more sort of organic, less produced sort of take, but it's okay because it's just what we wanted, and that's fine. You know, that's what we had. It's not a criticism so much as a subjective thing, I suppose, just me being transparent as a reviewer. And ultimately, again, we navigated the complex harmonies and chord progressions and chromatics and stuff like that we needed to, in a way which was typically very soulful, nice articulations with some stops and staccatos and legatos and vibratos, etc. Very good. Very good. There were some parts where we just kind of sung melodies as well, and they decorated, call and responded neatly, etc. No issues with the way the vocals were done. Vocals were very, very good. We were relatively sort of like chill and sort of like well contained throughout. It didn't seem like we wanted to emote too much, but there was a bit of vocal fry occasionally. We were a bit sort of quieter with other parts to try and sort of meet the mood of the music, I suppose. Most of these tracks were between 2.5 and 3 and 4.5 minutes. I feel like they were good lengths for those. There were no tracks where there was any filler as far as I was aware. We had verses and choruses, instrumental breaks, various guitar solos, saxophone solos, key solos, etc. These tracks were usually full of guitar, bass, drum, key, brass, saxophone, and trumpet, as well as hand drums, classical guitar elements as well. We were spoiled with the amount that was going on, maybe even different basses. I think there were some 808s in some tracks, electric bass in others, and I think even some claps and clicks and sort of rim shots there. We understand how to write music. There was never a point where I felt alienated by any of the drum parts, whether they were sort of eights or quarter notes, sort of like groove-oriented, sort of dancey parts, or 16th-note halftime parts. There was some cool sort of, even though I wasn't necessarily feeling how they were mixed or interpreted at that point, I liked that we had some breakbeats or some unconventional sort of like tom fill transitions and stuff like that. And like typically the drums were very sort of reliable. The bass and the low end was explorative sometimes. It worked within the triads and root notes, did go up to the octaves a few times, and sometimes was modal as well with how it approached the root notes as well as the transfers in between. The guitars played a variety of different extended and major and minor chords and triads and arpeggios, and there were some interesting sort of picked ideas on the sort of nylon string classicals. There was some cool pentatonic or bluesy sort of shred, sort of neo kind of jazz or funk element kind of guitar leads as well. They're decorated in mid to upper range. And usually, again, whether it was with the drums, the guitar, or the saxophone, even at the end of some songs, the guitars were well phrased and presented throughout. The saxophone there were some saxophone solo sections where it modulated neatly or scaled or soloed well, behaved well within the limitations of what was presented harmonically, and there was a lot of room to wriggle on, but then there's also not that much depending on how complex things are between note choices and intervals. Just again, the saxophone was nice and soulful and was either minimalist or it spread out when it had room to breathe, alongside the sort of trumpet parts going on the sides of it, such as Take My Word for It. The synth solo sections or the key solo sections, we were either playing extensions or sort of rolling around to glissandos or arpeggios or kind of beat-bopping around in the lower notes doing call and responses with certain vocal lines. Playing neatly or meshing with the guitar parts or other sort of harmonic devices like some of the string parts as well. Like with literal strings as well, because they had a nice sort of romanticism and glow to those. And just ultimately, I thought the keys were well played as well. We clearly understand how to play these instruments very neatly, and there's never a moment where it feels like you're confused as to apart from the breakbeats. But typically, I was never confused about what they were trying to implement or include within it. There was some sort of like paddy parts or riser parts occasionally, but typically it was those main sort of analog acoustic instruments. And even though there was some resonances, like they were doing some bass resonances, ultimately I think they thematically played the various major or minor or sort of seventh chords or even some ninth and sus chords really neatly. Typically the themes that we had matched the what we were discussing in a way where the vocals, they were maybe even more effective at sort of describing that mood than what the vocals sounded like, as opposed to what they were saying. Doc Jazz told some really good stories, and I appreciate that. It's just the vocals were very sort of consistent with their sort of expression in certain elements, so I relied on the music to kind of figure out a kind of a way of interpreting them, and I think that's totally fine. It's good to have some sort of more sort of common ground and anchor points. Yeah, ultimately, there were no issues with the chord progressions, bass lines, or scale choices, solo choices. They're rhythmically compelling, not out of place, like instrumentally very, very good. And the vocals and lyrics matched the mood of what was presented and what we heard through the headphones. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering, it's just a very loud. And I know that seems super lame. Why wouldn't you want loud music? It sounded like things were too dynamically constant. And I would have liked more headroom in the recording. It's just a lot to absorb in a sitting when we're trying to sort of mix things well enough for everything to be heard kind of individually but at a similar loudness. And it's fine to mix and master like that. It just sounded not choked, because that's not fair. But I think I was distracted by some of the bass resonances, for example, and like gratitude and stuff like that, to a point where it took me away from the music. It gave less room to the drums or the vocals in those parts, which was a shame because there were some really cool ideas going on there. It's not that it was written badly or even recorded badly or even mixed badly. It's that the choice we're making stylistically when we master by having the limiter set to that, depending on the list we choose. And it's testament also to the way that they did their EQing to be able to get that mix that clean, to be that loud without it distorting or fragmenting. I think if that's the one bit of sort of I'm not so sure about, because I mean, aside from maybe some overproduction of vocal parts, it's just things they sound I've already said it within the tracks that were relevant though. It's just me sort of putting it here. Music's around you in the headphones. Lots of interesting stuff going on between the sides of the cans, not all at the same time. The brass parts going from one to the other. Vocals, guitar, but you could hear everything when it appeared there. It's just some parts had less presence than others, and subjectively it would be nice for some to have more. But that's okay. That's just vocal points within a track, and there were some songs where things came down, to be fair, and were a bit quieter, so that's good. A lot of the dynamic range was compositional. Nice and loud, there's pumping, bass compression, limiting, like that they were handled, but I just would like more headroom. Applicable constructivity, I've spoken about the dynamic range, it's more a subjective thing, I suppose. As well as the way that, like I've already given my thoughts and any sort of like nuances there. General listener's perspective, outside of what I mentioned with the dynamic range, I feel like this album is otherwise a really fantastic effort by Doc Jazz. I appreciate the work they've put into it, as well as everyone else who is involved with it. They're very careful and well considered with their piece. I wonder if it's possible in future to have tracks with a bit more edge to it. It just seemed like a lot of these compositions were very safe. And it's okay to want safe recordings. But it's like texturally, they were texturally safe. But that's of course what you have with pop music. You know, even if it's kind of jazzy or bluesy or R&B influences, it's very kind of clean and palatable to listeners' ear. And I feel like it'd just be cool to hear a Doc Jazz do something a bit heavier. But then they don't need to prove themselves to me. They've got a great album here. I wish them all the best of luck in future. Thank you for watching my review of this track from an act, or this album should I say, from an act named Doc Jazz, titled Unknown Destination. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias. And they're, I'm sure they're on their website on all digital streaming platforms. And stay cool and stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists that support on time. It's need to help more than ever. Thought crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next SB Reacts. Spiderhands out.